Welcome back to Filter Optional.
Yes, I am Shannon.
And I am Chico. I'm the no filter.
And I'm the filter.
And guess what? We are once again back at Casa Colina.
We're on location. And I'm in my green shirt still because I can't wear it in the studio. So
How come you can't wear it in the studio?
Because we're behind a green screen, and I guess I'd fade all in, which
you would be
probably
part
be
of
fine.
the screen.
Yeah, I'd be part of the screen.
Yes.
Which may not be a bad thing, but I don't know.
We haven't tried it yet.
No.
Maybe we will.
No, we're not going to try it. But I'm just going to wear my green when I can.
And so this is the main, big living room. You maybe can see the back of the kitchen. Right now, as we're doing it, it's turning out to be a nice day out here at Casa Colina. The men are down working out. Who are they working out with?
Blue, the dog.
And who else?
The puppy, Drew.
Yes, and who's Drew?
So Drew Open Chain he was the youth intern at our church for Travis when he went through, but he's also a fitness guru and fitness instructor, and so he agreed to come work out at Casa.
Yes, and so he's our fitness instructor.
Yes.
And so we love having Drew. And he's a normie. If you listen to the last couple of episodes.
Yes, you'll have to explain what a normie is.
Yeah, normie, for the people that are at Casa Colina, the men here, the normies are the people that aren't alcoholics or drug addicts.
And in recovery. So
yes.
I'm a normie and Chico is not.
That's a nice thing to say. I think it's fair. I like being considered not a normie.
I know, you do. You don't like to be a normie.
Yeah, today, Shannon, I was talking to you just about what this episode's about.
Yes.
And you're just kind of following my lead.
Yes. So everyone out there know that I'm just following Chico's lead on this episode, so we're going to see where it goes.
We are. And the deal with, just following my lead, I've been thinking a lot about family history, going back, understanding that, maybe about addiction, but really, not so somewhat. But how do we communicate that? Because I think a lot of us have grown up in families that we don't even realize, here at Casa, we talk a lot about trauma.
Yes.
And we don't even realize that there might be generational traumas that are never even discussed and you don't even realize.
Right. I mean, even, we've talked about it before. Trauma can look so many different ways. It doesn't have to look like this, you having the trauma of losing your dad when you were 10. That's some real blatant trauma, but it could be trauma from living through the Depression. Or I'm talking about generationally.
Generationally.
Trauma of having your spouse go off to war.
Yes.
Things like that. I mean, there's a lot of generational trauma.
And my deal is like, I just want to talk about families. I want to talk about, just not understanding that, seeing where we come from. I spent a lot of time lately out in Midland.
Yes.
And out in Midland, I've gotten to know some older men, and I just love their passion for getting to know their history. There's a man out there that's really wanting to write a book about him and his father and stuff. And just, some people, some generations really didn't know how to communicate, intimacy and what it means to be intimate.
Well, and, a lot of that is, the electronic age. Back then, the art of writing a letter has been lost. That's how people communicated,
Exactly.
a long
But
time
even
ago. They could really think through and process their feelings and thoughts, and now everybody's just so impulsive about.
Well, and I disagree. I think a lot of people didn't process their feelings. They might have had their thoughts.
No.
There might have been love letters and stuff like that.
Right.
But really not processing their feelings with their kids and stuff like that. So just a little history of me is, I grew up in San Antonio. My given name, if you don't know my given name, is Albert Washington West the 5th.
Yes.
I am the 5th firstborn.
And
my dad
yes.
was the 4th. He was the firstborn. My granddad was the 3rd firstborn.
Yes.
My great grandfather, was the firstborn of 3. And so just understanding different things about our family, our history, our heritage. And on the west side, and I have some family members that watch this, and this is the history that I know. And so if I get it wrong, please comment. But I will.
Well, yeah,
I will share a little of that, and maybe Shannon share a little of the history she knows, and just how they were survivors. But my granddad, the third, a little history. Growing up in San Antonio from a kind of a ranching family, his dad was the sheriff of Bear County. It's kind of ironic at the time. Found some old newspaper clippings and stuff. He was combating marijuana with an H back in the early 30s.
Yeah, with an H.
Yeah, that's how they spelled marijuana back then. And drinking during the Prohibition. And there were some cool articles. But my granddad, who we called Tito, had a younger sister. And they were part of this society in San Antonio. And she was in the coronation as a page. And she was like 10 or something. And they were doing a practice in the coronation down in San Antonio, and the story goes.
A lot of people don't necessarily know what all that is.
Yes.
If you're not from San Antonio, I know that's hard to believe that a lot of people
Yeah,
don't know what all that
exactly.
is. It's a very big deal in San Antonio, I realize.
Yes.
And for my San Antonio people, I realize it's a gigantic deal. But
it is. I like that you say that.
But it is, it's the time for the debutantes. Generally, it's deb season, correct?
Yeah,
And,
and it's Fiesta, and it's celebrating San Antonio.
Yeah,
and
it's very what's the word? Pageantry. There's so much pageantry around it. It's beautiful and it's gorgeous and it's a wonderful time, and it's also a time of service.
Yeah.
Other that is very involved in the Order of the Alamo and everything does. It's so much fundraising and service for organizations and charities and everything like that. So it's a really great thing. But so there's a lot of pageantry, and so his grandfather's sister was in the coronation. She was how old? 10-ish, and so she was a part of the pageantry. And at the practice, they didn't have lighting. What did they use for lighting?
They utilize those torches,
torches.
And she
torches.
actually walked by one and caught on fire and ended up dying several days later, but very traumatic. And my great grandmother,
terrible.
I mean, it traumatized her.
Well, it's terrible.
And my grandfather was 14, and so my great granddad moved his wife and his son to West Texas, to Marfa. And so I share this story understanding. He met my grandmother, who was from Marfa.
Yes.
They dated in high school. My granddad ended up staying pen pals, so they did stay pen pals.
Yes.
Came back to San Antonio and finished it at TMI.
Because you didn't tell where he went. Oh, well, no, okay, so this is still high school.
Yes, still high school. Then he finished. He went to Texas.
TMI, which was a boarding school.
That's why I'm wearing my horns stuff.
Okay,
he went to Texas. And then at the end of the war, he was in the Merchant Marines. And he's driving. He hadn't seen my grandmother in like 6 years. Driving across the country to go over in the Merchant Marines right at the end of the war to do the cleanup and all that in 1946. My grandmother had been to college, several colleges. They had stayed in contact. She was working for American Airlines in El Paso, Texas. They go out that night, go across the border to Juarez, get drunk, and get married.
Well, I mean, yeah, they got married. You can add the get drunk in, but I think they wanted to get married.
I think they had
I think they wanted to get married.
They hadn't seen each other in 6 years.
Yeah.
I don't know if they.
Well.
Yeah, I mean,
Anyway.
maybe I'm embellishing, but I think they were enjoying it themselves. But the deal is, I share that. I mean, that in a way they hadn't seen each other. They get married. They do this deal. He goes to the Merchant Marines. Then they have 6 kids.
Right.
My dad was the firstborn.
All 6 boys.
Yes, and these boys, man, they were a handful. That was that side of the family, and then so right there, my granddad, has these 6 boys, has a working cattle ranch, and he we're gonna have to push pause on this.
Hold on.
All right.
Okay, so sorry for the pause. We had our puppy here, and we had to kind of take care of the puppy, put him in a kennel. But now back to, so your grandfather, your
Yeah, so my grandfather, he had 6 boys. My dad was the oldest of 6.
But your great grandfather didn't really know what to do when he lost his daughter,
and he
with
didn't
his
know
wife.
how to.
He didn't know how to comfort his wife.
Yeah, or any of those things. So there wasn't a lot of communication. You can talk about that with your family. We can see that and understand that. And so, the reason I'm bringing this stuff up is because my great grandmother, she was known as an alcoholic. My grandfather married an alcoholic. My grandmother died sober, almost
Yes.
30 years sober.
Yes.
And so there's alcoholism there, but it doesn't even have to be alcoholism. It can be not even communicating, not even, opening up, not even getting down to the feeling. So
Well, it's just not freedom in your life.
Yes.
There's a lot of freedom when you release that trauma. And if you want to talk about it on a spiritual level, for me, what I believe is that those spiritual bondages, those trauma bondages can hold you back from just freedom in living your life.
yeah, and then freedom in raising your kids, and you can see things that happen that you didn't even realize happened. And if we're not open and sharing about that stuff, and you said at the beginning of this episode, yeah, I went through trauma. My dad died in 1979, 40 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
there's a
open.
difference between secrecy and privacy, I think, when it comes to families, especially, because I don't think that either of us are advocating for you expressing all your family, dirty laundry, over the airways for everyone, but not to keep things secret that are secrets. You can have your privacy. I've always just told people there's just a difference between privacy and secrecy. Like, if my son is struggling with substance abuse, I don't want to keep that secret. I don't want that to be a secret, but I may want it to be private.
Yeah, and so we
for my
encourage
anonymity and
we
things like
encourage
that. I mean,
Al-Anon and all
yeah.
those kind of things.
You do definitely need some privacy, but I think people get confused when they think about exposing secrets or things that happened in the past. They just want to shut the door on it. I mean,
But here's the deal: is like I want to get away. I agree with what you're saying, Shannon, but I want to help people get away from. I believe in privacy. I'm not talking about exposing, but I am talking about let's not pretend like everything's perfect.
Right.
All of us.
Well, I think that's a secret you're
Yes.
holding if you pretend like it's perfect. So that's why I'm.
But see, my grandmother was open about her recovery.
Yes.
And when I spoke
Yes.
about at her funeral, I shared it, and people were encouraged that I shared it.
Yes.
A lot of times, but growing up in that family, my granddad, his dad never changed. My great granddad never changed his diaper or his little sister's diaper. The first diaper he changed, this is what my grandmother shared, was my dad's.
Yeah.
And it's a little thing like that. My granddad had 6 boys, never changed a diaper, but the first diaper he changed was me.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it was just, hey, that's what you do. It was one of those simple things.
I'm not going to say you were like not changing diapers, but
I changed diapers.
I mean, but
But the
you
thing,
do that gag like, oh my God.
I did.
If the kids threw up, I mean, there's like this whole like, no, I can't deal with it. Oh, I'm gonna throw up too. I'm gonna throw up too.
Yes, there is that.
Come on.
But what I'm getting at is, man, there's how do we connect with people, because all of us have pain in our life,
Right.
and so many of us that have pain don't even recognize. We might not even recognize we have the pain.
Right.
We might not even recognize that that it's all right to experience that pain. I was with a good buddy of mine, and I love getting out in Midland, and there's a message to this story is, man, I love this man that's out there, this older gentleman, but my buddy is just like, wow, he's hurting. I'm more attracted to that man in the sense that he's able to express his feelings. And he's
Yeah.
older. He's in his 70s. And I mean, he is recognizing, man, owning his mistakes, owning,
Yeah.
where he failed. So many of us do not do that.
Well, we don't know how to, or we don't, for me, it took me getting physically sick to put me down to where I had to discover, where I was, I was codependent on people, which I'm beginning to hate that buzzword because I don't know. I'm beginning to hate that word.
I respect that. I
why.
respect
It's
that.
like,
Because
but,
it sounds weird and
I
dirt
know.
and kind of.
Well, it sounds therapy-ish. It sounds textbooky or something. But
what they called that person
I want us to
before
sound
was the
real.
co-addict.
I know, but I'm just realizing that, my parents never really talking about, trauma. My dad lost his dad when he was 10 also
And he lost him how?
to suicide. So
Yes.
just
And you
lots
found
of
that
trauma
out when
I was like 22 years old.
Yeah, so there was this secret.
Yeah, so that's what I mean by the secrets. And then my grandmother was one of 13 children. And so she grew up in a very chaotic time with, 13 siblings and all that kind of stuff. And then she lost her husband. And then she kind of checked out for a bit because she didn't know how to handle losing her husband.
At all.
And so my dad and his brother, and they were the only two, in the family, and they were sent off to live with different uncles and had different experiences after, different grief experiences and whatever. And so I think my dad, all he wanted for us growing up was a stable home. We never moved. They still live on Centenary, and we tore our house down when I was in high school and rebuilt it, but my dad was not going to move us around. He just wasn't going to move us around. And he wanted stability and all that kind of stuff. But that caused me, I think, to feel responsible for people. Like I just, because we'd never really felt or never really like did the feeling thing. And so
and that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I'm glad you recognize that as that, you felt responsible for people you really never felt. And that you think back, your dad was 10 years old. His family didn't feel, at the time your grandmother had, one of 13, and there was like 7 or 8 of them that were in the war.
Yes,
in
at
World
the
War
same
II,
time.
At the same time, and from nurses to infantrymen. But the deal is back then, that generation didn't feel. And so,
they're like,
our
buck
parents,
up, buck up,
yeah,
buck
is
up,
like
buck up,
really
buck up,
don't
buck up.
know how to communicate those feelings. And so it's like, that's why I'm saying, today's episode, how do we really get into, we talked about some feelings, but how do we get to look back at the history? What were our parents, even our grandparents
because
given?
then growing up, I haven't had too much like outward trauma in my life, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I haven't lost a parent or a sibling, or my grandparents were all still alive until
when we got married.
Yeah. When we got married, I mean, my grandmother remarried, and he died when he was 96. He was born in 1900, and he died in 1996. And all my other grandparents, I had a great relationship with, and things like that. And and now as an adult, I have lost my aunt, and my uncle, and that's been
Your grandparents.
well, my grandparents, yes, too, but my aunt and uncle too soon, I think.
But here's the deal is. You haven't had a lot of trauma, but I like what you said is after you got sick with this autoimmune disease,
I knew something had to change.
Exactly.
I had to recognize what made me sick. I mean, obviously a disease made me sick, if that makes sense. But when you go to the doctor and they tell you they don't know the cause or the cure to what you have, you're looking at the doctor kind of like, well, then what good are you? I mean, I'm sorry.
You look at them that way, but also I think in a way
I need to find the cause and the cure.
And in a way, and maybe I'm wrong in this sense, is, with alcoholism, drug addiction, we're here at Casa Colina, is we want the men to see that they're powerless over their disease.
Right, because
And in
there's
a
no
way-
cause or cure. They say
Yeah.
there's no cause or cure,
Yeah.
to alcoholism. Same with my autoimmune disease. It's day by day. I have a daily reprieve from my circumstances.
Yeah, you're quoting the big book
I
right
know,
there.
right?
Yeah. And so it's like, how do we understand that? And my deal is neither Shannon or I, and I want to be careful because I want to read something to the audience.
You sure you don't want me to read it?
I think I should read
Okay.
it. I want to read something because I love my kids, and my kids aren't immune from any diseases or anything like
No.
that. But I want to read something that, not to take credit, but one thing we have done that I will say is, man, we talk about our feelings in our family.
Yes.
We do talk about, history and where, so different patterns. My mom has her patterns. Your mom has her patterns. My mom grew up in a divorced family.
Right.
She has, her dad divorced her mom, and then her dad remarried. And, I have an uncle that's a lot closer. He's 3.5 years older than me. He's 17 years younger than my mom.
Yeah.
And so, there's those things. So she's had stuff in her life, all of us come together in marriage, in families, but do we really talk about things? I think the fact that we have talked about things, we've been real open with our kids, provided that. And so what I want to read is, a year ago, Travis graduated high school. We took him down to Austin, and we both came back and dropped him off at Austin the day after he graduated. We get back, the day after that, and next to my bed was this letter that he had written to me. He wrote a letter to Shannon as well.
Yes.
And I write this because maybe
You read it. You read it.
I read it. I read it that maybe we can have a little discussion. But he goes, "Dear Dad, I'm writing this to be a thank you letter for many things. Thank you for the memories, wisdom, grace, and discipline you've instilled in me these 18 years. I know you went through a very hard time as a young kid losing your father. But God gave you another dad to help you. Though I will never understand what you went through, all I can share is how my experience with you changed me forever, and for the better. I will always remember you telling me your car could fly as a kid, and that you wouldn't show me until I was 18. Well, here I am, 18 and about to leave for college. I know now that it wasn't the car that had superpowers. It was really you. Watching you thrive around other people by being yourself and never compromising your identity is what allowed me to be the confident man I am today. The man who isn't afraid of what people think of him, who is confident in his failures and perseveres through his trials. You had the perfect balance of discipline and trust to not only guide me in becoming a man, but also in allowing me to form my own identity and become the man I am today. I am not you, but I am who I am today because of the significant role you played in shaping me to take control of my future. Your unconditional love for Jesus showed me that you can be fun and love Jesus. You showed me it's okay to speak up for my belief and that the only life worth living is a life filled with Jesus. Though this is not the end, this is the mere step into becoming more independent. I will miss coming home and either watching the Spurs, NCIS, or the Blacklist with you. I'll miss going to hit golf balls with you or just spending time with you. College will be an adventure, a fun one for sure, but I will face many trials. And although most people might be afraid of what lies ahead, I'm prepared for anything because of you. Whatever you may think, you're the best dad in the world, and you didn't miss a beat. I love you. Travis." Why are you laughing?
It's sweet.
It's very sweet.
Yes.
And so the deal is I read that is because we didn't compromise our failures. We embraced our failures. That is an overwhelming letter for an 18-year-old man to write to his dad. I mean, I'll
Yes.
always treasure that. You got one as his mom.
Yes.
And it's like, what did we do? We embraced our failures. We recognized where we came from. We recognized that, hey, our parents didn't have it all together. And it was all right to not have it all together.
Well, and I think it's okay to, what keeps the secrets at bay is it's okay to admit when you're wrong and age appropriately. Like there were times when Travis and Beck have been little kids and I have yelled at them inappropriately. I mean,
Yes.
like any
Like
parent does.
I have as
sometimes
well.
I want to slap them inappropriately, but usually it's just a word that's inappropriate. And, you walk away from it, but then you go back and you tell them, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You apologize. And that keeps them from building resentment, you from, keeping not secrets, but, just.
Well, yeah, there's those things. There's those things that, they know that I lost my dad. They know that, my mom remarried and, he adopted us and became my dad. They asked me questions. What was it like as a 10-year-old?
Yeah.
They, I shared those things with them. You talked about, different things in your life,
Yeah.
but we didn't, those kind of things. Yes,
And
we
I don't
made mistakes.
And I don't think, oversharing is the message, because for age appropriate, ness,
Yeah.
You
But
definitely don't,
the deal is from
you
from very early when Travis could talk and Beck the same. I mean, Travis went with me when I picked up, I don't know how many years he was, I don't know, when he was 6 weeks old.
Yeah.
My Alcoholics Anonymous chip, he's 20, so
Yes.
10-year chip, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting ready to sell 30 and he's getting ready to be 20.
Right.
But my boys knew that I had an allergy to alcohol.
Well, they said, yeah, they would say, they were like, is it like the peanut allergy, that like Madeline has? And I'm like, yes, it's like that.
And so that was age appropriate.
Exactly.
So the deal is like, man, understand where.
In fact, until Travis was, I don't know how old, but pretty old, until he was at least probably 10 or whatever, I don't think he thought that men in general drank alcohol. I think he thought only women drank alcohol.
Yeah, I mean, he was old.
He was old when he was like, wait, dudes drink alcohol? We're like, because he was around Gaston House and all those guys, and then
And
you.
at the time,
and
Bo wasn't drinking.
right.
Brad,
I mean, the people he was around didn't drink. The men that he was around didn't drink. It's so funny to me that when he finally clued in, like, oh.
But also, we shared with them that they might have the allergy because of the family
exactly.
disease,
And so they,
on both sides. But what
that's when you're like, no, men do not drink. It's like when I told Beck he was allergic to high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
Because he would always eat a bag of candy corns
And go hyper.
and go crazy nuts. And the first ingredient listed on there is high fructose corn syrup. And so I told him, I go, what? Because Beck's pretty savvy and he's pretty smart. So I couldn't tell him he was allergic to sugar because that just wouldn't fly. Because he'd be like, well, sugar's in fruit and sugar's in whatever. And so I just told him, I looked at the ingredient list on candy corn and first list, and I said, you're allergic to corn syrup. And he was like, and he told everybody that from then on. He was like,
But getting back
yeah,
to,
sorry.
this topic is, man, is like, it's all right to embrace the different traumas from generations ago. It's all right to, recognize, where your families have come from, Shannon's dad, my dad, different things that have happened. It's all right to, to begin to ask those questions, to understand where people, are really hurting. And
Well, and it's like I said before with, Beck having so much intestinal gut issues before he could talk as a baby, and it causing so much sleep disruption and everything. I think that's trauma. I mean, a trauma, you have to dig deep
Yes.
to kind of figure out
And
'Cause
if,
we all
and
have
if,
trauma.
and the deal is though, there's freedom. And what I'm saying is there's freedom in me embracing the trauma in my life. I've had trauma with the loss of my dad, aunts, different people early on, and it's good. And I don't deny it. And it's actually been a great gift that my dad died. I got a blessing from that. And I'm not faulting that at all. It's like awesome. And I'm not paralyzed with that fault either. And so it's awesome to, to embrace that, to experience that, to not shy away from it.
Yeah.
And it's magical when people can do that.
And share it with your kids. Teach your kids how to feel.
Yes.
Feel, fall, and fail. I'm still
For
going to
sure.
write that book. But teach your kids that, because they're going to feel, fall, and fail. And it's all how they
Manage
it and deal with
Yes.
it.
All right. Thank you for this
Yeah.
episode. Until next time, filter optional.
Yes.